everybody, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the all-new Transformers Studio Series Bumblebee movie, Voyager Class Thrust, one of the many Seekers who's commanded by Shockwave in order to destroy the launch pads before the Autobots can make their grand escape. And I'll be honest and say that this figure has actually turned out so much better than I could have imagined, especially where that colour scheme is concerned. You guys are probably all thinking, how on earth is this Thrust? As in G1, he was more brown/red. Well, it appears as if though Paramount and the designers of the movie were taking inspiration from how Thrust appeared in Transformers Armada, and I will be honest and say I actually think it looks really well done. Now, this guy for the most part is just a slight retool of that Cybertronian Starscream that we got released earlier on in this year, and to be honest, there's no doubt that we're going to get at least 10 different repaints of this guy. We're probably going to get the other Coneheads such as Dirge and Ramjet, and we're no doubt going to see Thundercracker and Skywarp, although I will be honest and say I'm not entirely convinced that I'm going to be picking all of them up, as these Voyagers are definitely quite big, especially considering how wide they are, and I don't really have all that much space on the shelf, and considering they were really just background characters, I'm not entirely sure that I want all of these in the collection. But you can see that Thrust here is actually really interesting, considering that he does now have a cone head. Now, the only major mold difference here with this figure when in comparison to Starscream is this entire cockpit region here at the top, as well as the nose cone attachment. You can see here that we now have this really awesome section which has been picked out in a super vibrant lime green, and you can also see here some nice paint details at the front. He also is sporting a slightly different head sculpt, that being the Studio Series Blitzwing sculpt, so we've now got the breather mask, which I actually think looks pretty decent. But other than that, the figure is exactly the same. He comes with the same weapons, so we get that same rocket cannon, as well as the two null rays, which do in fact attach onto the arms. But I just think the entire figure works so well. The colour, the proportions, I think it's a solid mould. I know there are some collectors out there who absolutely despise what Hasbro have done with this release, but I'll be honest and say he's one of my favourite Voyager Studio Series figures by far. You can see that as far as the detail is concerned, the head sculpt looks fantastic, remarkable detail, really nice looking paint, and the entire head has actually been painted, so including the black, the silver and the red. You can see here we've got a mixture of the cast green plastic as well as some of the paint, so you can see that here on the nose cone. It's slightly more glossy when in comparison to this matte finish that we've got going on. I just think everything looks super cool. We've got a much darker, almost camo green here for the arm, as well as that amazing mechanical detail which just looks so awesome, and that finger detail is just wicked. Definitely one of the best hand sculpts that I've seen from Studio Series so far. You can see we've got that cockpit, we've got these hydraulics here, which is just such a nice attention to detail. These don't play any role in transformation at all, and they can actually compress, which is just so awesome. You can see here for the thighs, really nice looking gunmetal, as well as those green panels. We've got extended mushroom pegs just to minimize hollow spacing, and even all of those have been sculpted. Here for the legs, we've got a slightly asymmetrical design due to the nature of the transformation, but once again, I don't think it looks too bad at all, and I just think the lighter, the darker green, as well as the grey, and of course even the black here for the thrusters works really nicely. Here for a back comparison, you can see how the wings are slightly different as far as orientation is concerned. So with Starscream, they were facing up, but here with Thrust, they are supposed to face down. So I guess it's really up to own personal preference. If you're after movie accuracy, then you are definitely going to want to poke these down. As far as articulation is concerned, Thrust does have a ball joint here at the head, but due to the nature of the design, it can be slightly restricted. We do get all of the same joints that we saw with Starscream, so I won't bore you too much as far as that aspect is concerned, but you can just imagine Thrust and the rest of his Seekers charging towards the launch pad in order to try and take down Optimus Prime and the Autobots. Such an awesome design, and I really hope that we can see these guys actually make an appearance in the upcoming Transformers Rise of the Beasts. As of course they are carrying over the Optimus Prime design, it'd be really cool to see as to whether or not they'll carry over the Seeker and Starscream design from the Bumblebee film. But definitely really cool figure. As far as integration for this gun is concerned, it's really rather weak, to be honest, so you simply just peg it here into the hand, but you can see how it sits off to a slight angle. I will however say it fits in the hand so much better when in comparison to Starscream, or how I like to actually display it is if you compress the hand for transformation and then just tab that underneath, it actually looks as if though the cannon has completely formed out the forearm, which I think looks super cool. But definitely really awesome looking Decepticon. Throws me back to the old Michael Bay movies when the designs actually looked good. Towards Age of Extinction and The Last Night, they definitely become rather messy and were a little too humanoid for my liking. It's wicked to be able to actually see the thrusters here at the top, the wings, as well as of course the intakes and a few of the landing gear components. So definitely a really awesome design here for Thrust. And for a Bumblebee movie size comparison, we've got Thrust compared next to both Cybertronian B as well as Starscream, and I think the scale here is pretty much spot on. Of course, the Seekers, for the most part, all share the exact same body type, so I can't really complain that much. And to be honest, I can't really complain that much about the figure in general, just as we don't really get a great look of him in the film, so I'm really unable to tell as to what's accurate or inaccurate. But judging by some of the source material that I managed to find online, that Blitzwing head sculpt is near enough spot on to the movie, as so is that brand new nose cone section. But you can see definitely a very big and bulky Voyager, especially when compared next to Bumblebee, and just getting him here out the equation so you can see Starscream and Thrust. I think they look fantastic together, and whilst it would no doubt be awesome to have an entire armada of Seekers, I just unfortunately cannot see that being viable with the space that I currently have left in the collection. Transformation for Thrust, you guys guessed it, it is exactly the same as Starscream despite this new nose cone attachment. So to begin with, you're going to want to remove all of the accessories and just set them off to the side. We can then come here to the wrists and just collapse them in, rotate here at the bicep so that the front is facing the back, and of course, you guys guessed it, repeat the same process. We can then straighten out the legs. We can take these hydraulic sections, just compress those in, come here to the shin of the figure, bring this out, ratchet this section down, extend this, and you can see this tab that will peg into the slot on the side of the thigh, so just peg that in there, bring this section down, come here to this side, and do the exact same thing. So extend this up, snap that in there, fold this section down, and then just take the feet, peg them into place, and rotate here at the hip, and just leave that like so for now. We can then take the wings here, bring those forwards, which will allow clearance for you to actually detach the nose cone of the head and then completely rotate the body round. Now, for those who will recall, this is my favourite step of conversion, as the entire Tetrajet literally forms near enough in one complete piece. Now, sadly, I have found that some of the joints, especially where this region is concerned, do have a tendency to pop off a little easier when in comparison to what we got with Starscream, but they do just tab back on, so I guess it's not the end of the world. We can then tab all of this into place, just like so. Come here to the front of the nose cone, snap that in there, and then here with the head region, you're just going to want to push this up until you can bring these two tabs over, snap that into place, and there are also some slots here that these tabs are going to peg into, so just align that up appropriately, snap that into place so that we're left with something that looks along the lines of this. We can then come here to the bottom, rotate here, bring that to the back, and of course repeat the exact same process. So just hinge that in, bend at the elbows. We can then collapse the wings and fold out this panel, which will reveal some really nice green detail, and repeat the same process. And then finally, for the main core conversion, you're just going to want to overlap these panels, and that is essentially Thrust fully transformed up into Tetrajet mode. But of course, you have to add the weapons on to really complete his look. So bring this cannon in, attach it via the 3 pegs and slots that we've got going on. So port this here into place, and then we can bring the null rays in, and these will actually peg in a slightly different way, so we'll utilize the tabs instead of the pegs, and just snap that one in there. Come to this side, and of course repeat the same process, and then that you've got Thrust fully transformed up into that Cybertronian Tetrajet mode, which is also a mode that I've seen many collectors actually hate on online, and it is quite a shame considering that I think this is pretty accurate to the film, and we don't really see this all that much in the movie. So Hasbro and Takara definitely did do a pretty decent job, and if you were to show me this, I definitely know that it's supposed to be one of the Seekers from the B movie, so I think they've done a pretty good job. You can see for the wing design, it's very abstract as far as it looks, but I think the Decepticon insignia looks pretty decent. You can see some nice green, so we've got that camo green as well as that lime green. The null rays look fantastic, as so does this huge cannon that we've got going on here at the back. Definitely really cool as far as its design is concerned, at least to me. Of course, there's some kibble here, but I'm almost certain that this actual design had this in the movie. You've got some nice details here at the front of the cockpit. We've got what appears to be an almost laser cannon here at the front, so this is definitely a very heavy infantry Seeker. And all the way throughout the top, you've got some nice sculpt work. Of course, you've got the fin here. We've got the thrusters, which look fantastic. And I actually think, for all intents and purposes, this is actually a very nice looking jet mode to accompany that Cybertronian robot mode. So I personally don't have many critiques with this figure at all. For those who are a fan of the Seekers, you're going to have an absolute blast with this guy. And if you actually like Starscream, then this guy is definitely an instant buy, as he's really, really well done. And of course, has got some new tooling, so will certainly stand out upon the shelf instead of just being a boring repaint. And for a very quick comparison, you can see Thrust is exactly the same here in jet mode as Starscream. It is merely just that the colours have been inverted. So where we had the blue and the red on Starscream, we now have got all of those areas colorized in green, which I actually think looks really cool. And I just think really for the both of them, the colour schemes really, really do work wonders. But as always, it's going to be down to your own personal preference as to whether or not you're going to go in on these Bumblebee movie Seekers. As mentioned beforehand, I may just stick with these two depending on what type of repaints Hasbro and Takara have up their sleeves. If they're going to release Skywarp and Thundercracker and they're merely just going to be repaints of Starscream, which is probably what they are going to be, I'm not entirely convinced I'm going to be picking them up, especially if they do turn out to be exclusives. Just as, despite me really liking the mold, I don't know if I like it that much to get like 10 different variations of it. And as mentioned, I just don't have the room anymore. I've got so many of the Siege Seekers, Seekers. I just don't know if I need that many Bumblebee movie Seekers, especially for characters that we don't really get a great look of in the actual movie. But Thrust here is definitely a really nice repaint and slight retool. I'm glad to add him to the collection, and I think it's definitely a very solid independent release. So with all that being said, I really hope that you enjoyed this review. I would love to know down in the comment section below on what you guys think of this particular figure. Do you think Hasbro and Takara Tomy did him justice? Do you think he resembles some of the source material that was put out after the Bumblebee movie? Or would if you preferred them to perhaps have been slightly inaccurate to the films and had given him a slightly more G1 accurate colour scheme with the red and the maroon colour instead of this Armada Thrust colour scheme with the lime green and of course the darker green? I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and until my next review, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.